All right, people, how you doing? It's your man, Tim Black. Thank you so much for tuning in. How y'all feeling? Everybody good? All right, let's start the show. Tim Black. Tim Black. Tim Black. Yes, I am. True. Funny. Tim Black. I am TimBlack.com. Tim Black. Hey, everybody, what's going on? It's your man, Tim Black. Thank you for tuning into the show. Look, guys, this is it, man. Tim Black at Night show. Let me give it up for everybody in attendance tonight. All right, guys, if you're at this show right now, what I need you to do is share it with people on Facebook, Twitter, because I'm not doing a FaceTime with this one just because it's really hard to coordinate when you have a Google Hangout guest in the house. Dan Roll's going to be here. That's right. You know it, people. You know it. So look, guys, before I bring Dan on, right, we need to talk a little bit because there's been so much news, so much happening. People need to be more aware of it. I did a Coffee with Tim Black show today, and I touched on a lot of issues I think you will be concerned with and that will matter to you. All right? So one of the things I talked about was the Guccifer documents, the releasing of those documents, and how certain media entities are trying to paint it as a fraud. They're saying, no, you can't trust this stuff. It's all conspiracy theory. Nothing to see here. And I want to start changing the narrative on this whole dismissive attitude that our media has. Now, I can't do anything about mainstream media, but to those people who are independent media, or those people who call themselves independent media, we're going to start holding those people to a higher standard when it comes to telling us the truth. All right? That's what we need to do. We need to make sure that they are actually working on our best interests. Because how can you dismiss the Guccifer 2.0 documents that are just released without doing any fact checking? I mean, how would you know they're not real? How would you know they're not authentic? I don't want to, look, I'm not going to name names. I got enough enemies. Enough people don't like me as is. Well, actually, not enough people don't like me. I think more people need to dislike me because they get away with murder. But I don't want to start anything. All right? I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the guy starting all the trouble. But if you are out there lying, if you're out there misleading people because you want to support your candidate, well, I'm going to call you out. And I'm not going to name your name, I'm just going to call you out. All right? The Guccifer document showed us there's a pay-by-play going on that extended beyond just what we normally would believe. We're talking about money that went to the bank bailout being put into the hands of various Democratic Party members. Now, this is a big deal. As one of my friends on Twitter said, man, I had friends. I think it was a friend of mine that works actually with TYT. He said he had friends that lost their homes. And there are these Democrats go taking this money. It's right, it's horrible. And we need to start holding not only media accountable, but our politicians. I'm a Jill Stein supporter. People know that. I don't hide that. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. Now I'm a Jill Stein supporter. It wasn't personality that made me want to support Bernie. It was his policies. And those policies happen to line up with me with Jill Stein. All right? That's where I come up on this. That's no secret. But I'm open to all types of debate. But what I don't do is carry so much water for my chosen candidate that I can't see what's going on in the world, that I would hide news or mislabel news to support a candidate. I don't work for the Green Party, nor do I work for Jill Stein. I just support her candidacy. I've met her. I believe in her. But that's not what these people are doing. These people will not do a video or an article or an episode on an issue if they think it will reflect badly on their candidate. And that's not how I roll. So that's the first thing. It's Guccifer documents. Check them out for yourself. WikiLeaks has started releasing it. They redistributed it. And I don't think that Julian Assange, who I have a lot of respect for, and all of the people that work with WikiLeaks, would do that, putting their credibility on the line for something they didn't believe in. So I believe that it's trustworthy. I believe you should go check out the Guccifer 2.0 documents. Do that, guys. All right. Next thing I was looking at, and I talked about this in Coffee Time, guys. If you don't have my Coffee Time stuff, go get it. It helps this channel, and if you shared it, that'd be great too. Everyone talked about Donald Trump's taxes. Oh no, Donald Trump's not paying his taxes. Oh no, Donald Trump's a businessman looking for loopholes. And then today I read in The Guardian that Donald Trump shares an address in Delaware with a number of other entities. Over 285,000 different businesses use a Delaware address as their business address to avoid paying some taxes. Do you know who he shares that address with? Apple, Walmart, various other huge Fortune 500 and better companies. But here's the best part, and you're going to really laugh. One of the entities or people that he shares this address with to protect himself from taxes is Hillary Clinton. That's right, Hillary Clinton. And look, you don't have to take my word for it. Take the Guardian's word for it. Fact check that. See, a lot of these people out here who have been for the years, they'd hear a candidate complain about the loopholes that politicians use, or the loopholes that rich people use, and the loopholes that our corporations use, and you hear it, but you don't pay attention. Republicans aren't the only one that owns companies that use loopholes. Democrats own companies that use loopholes too. Even some Democratic candidates like Hillary Clinton. But guys, if you are independent media, you should be reporting that. You should be telling the truth, no matter who gets the blame. Now, Greg Palast is a person that I had an opportunity to meet when I was in Philly on an election fraud panel along with Lee Camp and Michelle Bollet. It was great that they invited me. I was happy to participate. Some people disagree with Greg Palast, certain things that he does. But I tell you this one thing about Greg, true journalist, real news guy, calls it like he sees it, and then has sources to back it up. But see, that's not the type of media that we have right now. We have media who are really just playing, as my man H.A. Goodman would say, as public relations firms for Hillary Clinton. And I'm tired of you lying to people. I'm tired of you misleading people and then using your fear for Trump as being an excuse. There's never an excuse for denying facts. There's never an excuse for falsifying truth. And there's never an excuse to lying to the public and betraying trust. No such thing as a white lie, just a lie. No such thing as a baby lie, a tiny lie. It's just a lie. And when you omit information and when you refuse to run certain stories because you think it will hurt Hillary, you hurt us. So you choose to not hurt Hillary and hurt us by keeping us in the dark. You're not doing anybody any favors by doing that. Except yourself. Well, maybe not. Maybe you're hurting yourself too. So all this stuff that I'm talking about, it keeps pointing back to one place, man. We have corruption. Corruption is rampant. It's like everywhere, guys. And only some of us are willing to talk about it. I know you spend a lot of time online in your community, in the community, and it's like it's a lot of us. But if you start looking at the overall population, it's not that many of us, man, who are really truth seekers. We're a small fraternity. And when you turn us against one another because you're lying and they believe you, but then they don't believe the real truth tellers, that's the problem. You're confusing people. Neither one of these candidates are good for America. And you pretending like because one, in your opinion, is a little bit better, is the best choice. It's not the best choice. Let me tell you something about freedom that I learned from the funky academic on YouTube. It's not freedom when you have to choose between two horrible choices. Freedom is not being forced to choose between a bullet or a knife, or cyanide or rat poison. Freedom would be not having to choose that and picking what your choices are. That's freedom. And when they give us this false idea of freedom by giving us two horrible candidates and restricting the other two, that's not freedom. Well, you can live in hell or you can live in Hades. They both hot, man. Can I live over here? Can I live over here? You want to live where they're shooting, or you want to live where there's a bunch of heroin addicts and meth heads walking around breaking in your cars all the time? Which one do you want? Well, how about I live somewhere where it's safe? That's not a choice. See, then that's not freedom. Get it? You got it. Man, I'm just getting tired of hearing the nonsense online. It's frustrating, but it's beautiful too. I don't want to focus on the negative. Let's focus on the beautiful. But the negative is here, and just because you don't want to pay attention to it or because you want to ignore it doesn't make it go away, man. You can go watch Luke Cage. I like Luke Cage, but you know what I got to do? I got to cut it off and get back to reality, because life is not a Marvel comic book character. And what's going on now, guys, we have to address it. We have to look at it, because if we don't look at what's going on and we don't address it full head on, it'll never change. How can you change something if you don't admit it's there? I heard somebody saying, well, this person's not a sellout because back in 1987, they did something. What's that got to do with 2016, man? What's that got to do with it? I bet you Idi Amin helped the old lady across the street at one point. What's one ethical action have to do with 3 years of crap? How does that balance out? Well, long time ago, he could have did this or she could have done that, and they chose not to do it. Therefore, they're not this. Well, you know what? You are what you do today, not what you did 10 years ago. Not what you did a year ago. It's about what you do every day. Every day, I seek to tell the truth, man. So with that, man, it's not about me, man. It's about the truth, and that's the only thing I fight for. So whether my audience becomes 3 million, 3.5 million, or 3.1, whatever that is you got, look, don't matter. Because if you're not in this to help people, you're not in it to change the world, if you're not in to make the world a better place, if you're not in it to help one person, then what are you really in it for? You might as well just go open up a McDonald's or something, because all you're doing is making money. I mean, if that's your focus, why don't you just day trade? I mean, seriously. I mean, if you're not really in it for the reasons that you got in it or somehow you lost your way, let me be your reminder. People who do this right here, and people who do what Dan Rolle does, which is tell the truth, we're not in it for money. Of course, money has to play in it because we got to have a place to live, but that's not why we do what we do. I enjoy my job. I enjoy my business. I enjoy this chosen profession, but you know what? I enjoy helping people and touching people more than I enjoy that. You understand? That's the real end game. So look, guys, that's a lot of talking, but I hope it makes sense to you. I just don't want people to be misled by those who are lying to us and not telling the truth. And I'm seeing too much of it. And you guys are my community, your Dan Rolle's community. We're all part of the same thing.
We're going to go on.
Revolution. And speaking of Dan Rolle, my guest tonight is Dan Rolle. Give it up for Dan.
Hey, good evening.
Hey, what's up, man?
Yeah, how's the audio? We sound okay?
You sound just fine, brother. You good to go.
Yeah, great segue too. I really appreciate everything you're doing. It's amazing how much the two communities of people who follow what we're trying to do in the progressive community have really ignited together, and so many of the people who are following what we're doing here and and so many of the people who follow you have reached out to me in support. And so for everyone watching, or for everyone who's going to watch at home, thank you so much. Tonight, I think I just want to, again, in addition to saying thank you, I want to start out and just let you know, if you're watching at home, or you're watching a replay of this, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. And again and again and again, and we're going to do a little bit of history tonight. And for those of us in the progressive community, this year there has been a word that has risen above in the community, and that term is called gaslighting. I'm a psychology student myself, and to gaslight, it actually comes from a movie a long time ago, and what gaslighting means is what somebody who takes advantage of someone, takes someone for granted, and who sort of builds a wall around them to make someone feel that they're questioning their own sanity. And that term has really risen above many other terms I would use to describe what I've seen this year. But the idea that institutions which for decades we thought supported our needs, and for decades, I for decades have been a member of the Democratic Party, which I thought I was because it was the party of justice and fairness, and because it was the party of the little person. And instead, having found out so much of that is not the case, I, myself, and so many of you watching tonight have been gaslighted. You have been told that you were crazy, or a Bernie bro, or that you were masochistic, or that you were racist, or that, you're wrong for not getting in line. And for those of you who still, in your gut, you feel like you're not ready to get in line behind whichever candidate, like, it's okay. You're not crazy. And I want to talk about that tonight. So
I love it, man. I love it, Dan. They so often, brother, like, for instance, especially for you white guys, man, the whole shaming of white people, like, and Tom, look, shout out to Tom Hartman. He started following me on Twitter today. What's up, Tom, man? Look, Tom, I love you, buddy. You know what? Tom Hartman knows more about the history of politics in Washington, D.C. than probably I'll ever learn, okay? This guy's been in it for years. But when you set up this false narrative where it says, because you're a white guy, that means you can't vote your conscience, to me, that's horrible. That's a horrible precedent. And to put that type of constraint on people, to try to limit their freedom to choose the candidate that they most align with, out of something where you think, well, black people are going to get hurt if I don't. I think, look, you know what? Black people have been getting hurt in America for a long time, Dan. Yeah. It didn't start with Trump. So yeah. I, as a black guy, I think I trumped Tom on this, and I can say, vote your conscience, Dan. And yeah. all you guys, Michael Salomon, all my friends, Ed Harris, Lee Camp, Jimmy Dore, vote your conscience. Tom's wrong, right? Just to add on to what Dan said. But Dan, gaslighting. Could you give me an example of gaslighting?
Yeah, I mean, you highlighted a number of those things, but I think, and I'm so glad that we're headed back to that, because so much of history, unfortunately, you don't get to understand until it's history. And for those of us who in early November or in December of 2015 couldn't understand why so much of what was happening in the progressive movement, specifically with Bernie Sanders, wasn't being covered in the media, or why so much of the narrative around those of us who were supporting progressive candidates was cast in some of those words that you used, why people who were voting for, an insanely progressive 74-year-old white man named Bernie Sanders were called, to your point, were called racist. When we went to, and we'll talk about this hopefully, when we went to caucuses in the state of Nevada, and we saw precinct after precinct after precinct, captains on Twitter, Facebook, social media saying, Sanders won, Sanders won, Sanders won, Sanders won. And then to hear, before the caucus was completed, that Hillary Clinton was the winner. When in Nevada in May, when we were told that, much to my surprise, those of us who supported Bernie Sanders were angry, bloodthirsty chair throwers. When they seized on that momentum to abuse half the party. When Bernie Sanders supporters were chastising the South because he was Jewish. Those are all really good examples of gaslighting. But now what we see when we look back at history, we're starting to understand what really happened in this election cycle. And you hit the nail on the head. It's really easy right now to cast a narrative and to say you have to vote for this person because so much is at stake. But I think I am ready to, and I hope, and I would encourage those of you watching tonight, I am ready to settle in and sit through a few years of discomfort and pain and struggle to make the change that we really have to make in this country. And I am willing. I don't feel that it can get a lot worse in terms of the people, who I talk to every day, the people of my generation who Secretary Clinton chided as being baristas and living in their parents' basement. Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because the system has taken away the very same opportunities that allowed people like Donald Trump and Secretary Clinton to get where they are. And I think most Americans, the reason that 70% of Americans aren't really excited to vote this year is because you don't see a ton of difference between the two candidates. And when the election, so much of what happened this year off the grids. And so if it's okay with you, I want to kind of get into the narrative cool, and explain it.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead, man. But to your point about the unexcitability, I guess, if that's a word, about the candidates on both sides, not just on the Democratic side. I saw a survey, I think it was put out by Fox or Breitbart or some right wing, like 60% of Republican voters say they were voting against someone, and only like 24% say they were voting for someone. So this is something that affects both candidates all the way around. But with great points, Dan. Yeah, please elaborate on the historical points.
Yeah, so for those who have followed me, and for if you're new to what we've been exposing in Nevada, please go to my Twitter feed. I try to lay that out there. I know that's not the best medium for everyone, but it's chronological, and it's there, and it will stay there. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Dan. I ran for Congress in the state of Nevada in the congressional primary this year. And prior to that, I didn't have any political experience, but like so many people, I was inspired by, a man named Bernie Sanders who told me that I could make a difference and be part of that change. And I decided that in my state, I wanted to do that. And I had the crazy idea that if I was going to go, I might as well go big. So I ran for Congress, and got to see so much of, what happens from a political narrative. But being, someone in my, I guess, mid-30s now, I have a wealth of understanding how the world works and how business works. And I had the opportunity to look at the electoral system as a business person, as someone who's interested in IT and technology. And what I found, maybe some other day we could talk about what happened when I ran for Congress, but today let's talk about what happened in the general election. And hopefully that casts the sort of narrative for those of you who don't know why it is that I know what I'm talking about, maybe now we do. But I would say, if you really want to understand what happened in this election, I would ask you to go back to 2008. In 2008, I would remind you that Hillary Clinton was once again the establishment candidate. And this guy came along named Barack Obama, who had a different playbook and who used radical new tools like social media, individual forecasting and turnout, who used a new technology and platform called micro-targeting, which is essentially finding you and your closest 3 friends and finding out who you're going to vote for. And they were able to use technology, excitement, and a really brilliant message, and much to the chagrin of the Democratic Party in 2008, they won. And a lot of sort of the establishment that we now know started the work of 2016 in 2008. And specifically, one of the people that did that was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager in the state of Nevada, a guy named Robbie Mook, who by now we've seen a lot of in television. And Robbie learned a hard lesson in Nevada specifically. Nevada is one of those few crazy caucus states. And what they learned in Nevada in 2008 was there's no such thing as a result in a three-tiered caucus system. And the system can be manipulated by controlling who is allowed to attend the caucus, who is allowed to vote in the caucus, and more importantly, who is excluded from the caucus. And when we flash forward, we'll talk about that, but in 2008, the systems in the Democratic Party that monitored voters were not consistent. There were many different platforms across the country. And what the Clinton team learned at the time was they needed to centralize that if they were ever going to make a run for the presidency again. And so back then, it's my belief, and I've cast the narrative for this, that Clinton teamed up with a company that is called NGP-VAN. And they began the slow assault on the Democratic Party state by state by state, making deals with the individual state, city, and county parties to move their individual tracking systems to a platform called NGP-VAN. And NGP-VAN we then found out about for the very first time at a national level when Senator Sanders was accused essentially of having his team members hack access to Hillary Clinton's VAN file. So, my 2012 example of that was the Clark County Dems in Nevada. Clark County is where Las Vegas is. They were using a platform called Nation Builder, which is a superior platform. NGP-VAN, which is run by a guy who worked for Clinton, came into Clark County and made a deal that no solid business could refuse. And essentially muscled their way into Clark County. And then if you have Clark County, you have the state of Nevada. Now, at the time, again, you don't understand why that's significant. But when we start to flash forward and we see how Tim Kaine is running the DNC, how he is replaced by Debbie Wasserman Schultz, how Debbie Wasserman Schultz is able to muscle the state parties into using the system called NGP-VAN. And now we're at 2016 or 2015. And, what we now know, again, we talk about gaslighting. We thought, wow, it's not fair that Hillary's getting so much attention. Well, we now know that was because the DNC had decided in 2014 that Hillary Clinton was the nominee.
Right.
So they start using the system called NGP-VAN to start building systematic structure around the Clinton campaign. And what you're able to do with a piece of software like NGP-VAN is you're able to take what the Democratic Party, or really any party for that matter, knows about its voter base. And you're able to assimilate that with the state voter file, which candidates have access to. And you're able, with great specificity, to target and understand at a house-by-house level who is going to be voting for you, but most importantly, who's not going to be voting for you. And so by doing that, Secretary Clinton and her team was able to use NGP-VAN to really understand and aggressively attack the early primary states. But something happened, something called Bernie Sanders, and something that in 2008, the Clinton team could not have predicted, which is that so much of this year's election happened and grew in small corners of Facebook, in YouTube, in channels and videos like this. And that grew out of the control of that system. And it formed these pockets of excitement for Senator Sanders that NGP-VAN and those systems couldn't really account for. And so what happened was you have Hillary Clinton slowly losing this front runner status to the point that it is now assumed in January that Hillary is no longer the front runner. And her argument of being the electable candidate has now been completely eroded. And only one state stands in the way. That state is Nevada. So using this enormously powerful tool, the Clinton team is able to, with great specificity, understand who will be attending the Nevada caucus. And they know, and early polling tells us, that over 70% of new registered voters in the state of Nevada leading up to the caucus were intending to vote for Bernie Sanders. So my Twitter, you can see the leaked memos and polling internally from the party and from Team Clinton, where they're freaked out because the vast majority of the new registrations in the state of Nevada are for Bernie Sanders. Now, the media is starting to cast this scary narrative for Secretary Clinton that is, hey, she's losing in a couple states. Nevada, this great firewall, it doesn't exist anymore. The Clinton team starts to slip and they say, oh, you know, Nevada's really not the bellwether state that we thought it was. You know, it's a lot of old white people. I got to tell you, like, looking around my neighborhood, that's not the case. So what Team Clinton is doing, and again, for those of you who follow me, I apologize that I didn't have the ability to see this at the time. But Team Clinton was able to use the ground machinery that they have. And we have now absolutely demonstrated that by teaming up with Harry Reid, they were able to really understand who is going to attend the caucus. And when it was determined that it looked very threatening for Secretary Clinton, it's now clear to those of us who watched that, you know, Senator Reid was able to call in favors with some of the most influential unions in the state of Nevada, and they were able to pour people, and in many cases paid workers, into those caucus sites. And you say, like, how is that possible? But again, we've all seen the videos now that are now famous of, you know, people entering the caucus sites in Nevada without registering. Caucus sites concluding business without officially electing delegates. Many of you have seen the state delegate list where Hillary Clinton herself was listed as a delegate. And, you know, I wish we had all the time to explain that. And for now, I'll just ask that you trust me, and I'll do what a lot of media doesn't do. And I'll say, do your own homework and go look at the data that's out there, and it will surprise you. So what Secretary Clinton was able to do was leverage those pressures to pull off a victory in a state that, had she lost in, she would have certainly no longer been able to be, you know, the presumptive. Her argument of being the electable candidate would have been destroyed. And all data tells us now that it's almost a certainty that Senator Sanders would be the Democratic nominee. And again, if you want to see that, please go to my Twitter feed, take it. It's all there. You know, you say, like, why would Harry Reid want to influence an election for Secretary Clinton when in 2008, Senator Reid and the Culinary Union supported Obama? And the answer is simple. Harry Reid is deeply tied to a scandal with the EB-5 visa, which is where you pay money to get your visa. And he is deeply tied to that visa program with a guy named Tony Rodham. And Tony Rodham, where does that name sound familiar? It's Hillary's brother, right? So Hillary's brother is equally, you know, in trouble with this EB-5 visa program. So we already know that Trump's not going to save Harry Reid, and we certainly know that Harry Reid isn't going to save. That Senator Sanders isn't going to save Harry Reid. And so the imperative for him to pull the lever for his friend Hillary is absolutely there. Now, you know, we don't have time tonight to cover what happened at the state convention. Everybody knows that by now. Yeah. Or if you haven't, you can just go look for yourself. It was a terrible, terrible thing that the DNC did to half of its party. And again, history, you don't know history until you look back. The DNC did in May to half of its party a terrible thing. And at the time, you know, you look and you say, okay, well, that's a one-time thing. But then you see Secretary Clinton doing it again to half of Donald Trump's supporters and making these broad swaths of sort of, you know, the word she used, basket of deplorables, right? Basket of deplorables, absolutely. And make no mistake, my friends, if you still love Bernie Sanders, you are one of those, you are in that basket. She may not say that right now, but you're in that basket. And if you get lectured on Facebook by one of your friends about why you're not voting for the first female candidate ever, that's because you are firmly planted in that basket. But if it's okay with you, I would love to talk about how that really ferments into what is currently probably the best example of electioneering that I have ever seen. And, you know, for those of you who are hearing about this the first time tonight, this is going to really hurt to hear, and it's going to it's going to really shock you that we live in a country where what happened in Nevada in May, June, and July is going to take your breath away. So, I think we're here tonight to talk about who is Adrian White.
Yes. Who is Adrian White? This woman, and actually, Dan, this is how I really became known of you, right? I saw this thing. People were contacting me saying, "Tim, you need to talk to this guy." And I started to dig in. So I did a coffee show, and because I reached out to you because I wanted to use a quote from you, and I know it's kind of dicey. We both walk this line of surveillance.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to put your name in the video without your permission,
sure.
frankly. And so yeah, guys, Adrian White, please, Dan, go there, brother.
So when very recently, I have been following Nevada. It continues to be a very hotly contested state. We know now that Jill Stein's polling anywhere from 3 to 10% across the country. And I had been following a number of people in Nevada who didn't want to go and support Clinton were electing to support Jill Stein and the Green Party. And they founded a really good grassroots effort to get Jill Stein on the ballot in support with the national party, the Green Party. And, in Nevada, it's simple. To get on the ballot, you have to have 0.5% of the total registered voters. In Nevada, that ended up being about 5,000 signatures. In the state of Nevada, the Green Party collected 8,000 signatures, more than enough by any standard measure.
Yes.
Had nothing to worry about. Everybody felt really great going into the count. And then something started happening. Signature after signature after signature was discounted by the Secretary of State. Irregularities in information. And, at the time, I think the people on the ground, what I know from running an election is you can only see the next 5 minutes in front of you at any given time in an election. And if we don't see that now, when one day Hillary Clinton is the front runner and the very next day it's Donald Trump, that's really how it works in this process, the way that it's set up. And, at the time, I don't think anyone could have understood what was going down. But as I began to do the research, I started reaching out to some of the Green Party in Nevada and asking them, like, hey, can you get me some of these numbers? I'm confused about what I'm seeing here. Can you tell me what happened? And they said, yeah, here's the numbers we have. These are the numbers we collected. These are the numbers that White Paper Solutions collected. And okay, White Paper Solutions, what's that about? Like, yeah, White Paper Solutions is a company that we hired to collect the signatures. We're pretty frustrated about it because those ended up being the signatures that were primarily invalidated. And so I start looking into this, and I find out by looking at the information that is the case. Almost all of the signatures collected by White Paper Solutions were invalidated. And so I was like, okay, well, I wonder how much, what's their involvement? So I start looking at the FEC reporting for White Paper Solutions, and I find that White Paper Solutions was paid $17,000 by the Stein campaign to collect signatures. And so let's pause right there. If you are a company who is paid $17,000 to collect, let's just say 4,000 signatures, you better do a damn good job. You better do that is well over, it's almost $4 per signature.
I'm in the wrong business, Dan.
I agree.
Need to be collecting signatures or something.
Yeah. So $17,000, and that's just what's available now. It may be more from what we have. So $17,000, but most of these signatures are invalidated. So that's when I really started looking into White Paper Solutions, and so I said, okay, what can I find out about this mysterious company? And lo and behold, prior to May of 2016, this company didn't exist. And so after doing some research, we find that it's registered in the state of Nevada. The type of business that it's registered in just happens to be the type of business which you don't have to disclose if you're an officer of. Now that's interesting. So, after explaining to the Secretary of State, why it was important that I got this information, multiple phone calls, multiple demands. I think my Twitter followers probably broke their phones eventually until they were able to give me the information and say, this is the person who owns this company, someone named Adrian White. So then I'm able to team up with the Green Party again, and sure enough, here's Adrian's information. We look into Adrian White, and no one in the state of Nevada has ever heard of this woman. And I may not be the most liked political figure in the state of Nevada, but you know, it's a small state and we all know each other. It's a big little town. Nobody in the state knew who Adrian White was. And you know, so my mind just starts going all these places, and we find out that lo and behold, Adrian White doesn't live in Nevada, that there's no trace of this company prior to the election or prior to May, and that after the signature counts, the company vaporizes. It goes away. No one can find it. The website's down. The phone number's down. And interestingly enough, the archive in Who Is has been pulled off. And you have to know someone.
Wow.
You know, you have to have some pretty good connections to pull off the archive from the Wayback Machine. You know, so right there, if we stopped right there, you'd say, okay, well, that is weird. That is odd. But, you know, why is that? And it's simple. All you have to do right now is go to 538, look at Nate Silver, and you'll find that in the state of Nevada, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are only a few thousand votes apart. It's 49-49 on any given day. It's going to swing back and forth. But if you have a candidate who's capable of polling between 3 and 10% of the vote in your state, those voters aren't going to be voting for Donald Trump if they're given the option of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, right? And so if those votes could cost you the election, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that that's not an option for people come November. And so, you know, again, I wish I had some secret fly on the wall to know exactly who's pulling these triggers, but a lot of people have done the work for me, and I'm so appreciative. There are a few Adrian Whites out there, but after talking to some members of the Green Party in Nevada, we do know that the Adrian White who came to Nevada representing herself as the founder of a company that never existed is a voice actress. And that's all she's ever been. We know that she has been on divorce court with a gentleman named Nicholas Grossi, who was also here with her working for White Paper Solutions. So if you are trying to keep a candidate off the ballot, and if you are trying to craft a system in which to do that, you're going to have to be pretty politically connected to know the ins and outs of the system. You're going to have to be pretty educated on the state of Nevada, and you're going to have to hire someone to do that for you. So who are you going to hire? You're going to hire an actor, right? Wow. So Adrian White has largely disappeared, and while her current whereabouts are pretty much unknown, it looks like she might actually be working with Secretary Clinton in the state of Georgia right now, in the HRC office. And one thing I'm careful of is social media, the internet. It's really tricky, and I don't want to send my followers or your followers on a witch hunt. You know, I think both you and I understand that we don't want to get, you know, some poor person out there whose name also happens to be Adrian White,
exactly, yeah.
blamed for this. But I think what we all want, is we want to know who is Adrian White and what was her role, and if she was anyone capable of demanding $17,000 as a fee to collect 4,000 signatures. This woman should be proud to reveal her name. She should be proud to tell us what happened in the state of Nevada, and she should be proud to explain to us why the vast majority of her signatures were invalidated.
Yeah, we need to put her on Shark Tank. She's got a great business model.
She's got a great business model, absolutely.
You know, we should duplicate it and help people all across the country to be able to start a business like you. So Adrian White, why don't you come on out?
Yeah.
And, you know, talk to Dan and I and see what we can do about getting you on the show. I've already extended an offer to her, Dan. When I first contacted you and I mentioned it in my show, I told her, come on, you know, I'd gladly bring her on the show and let her tell her side of the story. It's not about slandering your name. Won't you prove your name? Because as I stated before, you know, politicians can get away with a lot of things in the court of public opinion, but average citizens, you're going to have to live with this, and this is not going to go away. The internet is forever, baby.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you, Miss White, to come on out and raise your hand if you got one.
Yeah, let us know about the great work that you did for the Green Party, because obviously you had to be very proud of the work that you did. What we released yesterday, which was probably some of the most disturbing evidence about Ms. White's conduct and behavior, was a screenshot of the program that I mentioned earlier, Nation Builder, which is NGP-VAN's competition. And it's a screenshot from Nation Builder where a young lady named Adrian White proactively reached out to the Green Party, falsely represented her credentials, and asked for access to help support the initiative in the state of Nevada. And so, it's unfortunate, Tim. I don't like coming on here because unfortunately for the Green Party, this isn't great. It doesn't look great that they paid $17,000 for this and this happened. And I totally understand that. I think a couple of my people, we've talked back and forth with the Green Party. We're working on, hoping to reach out to Dr. Stein, because I think any good person, I think, can get past the embarrassment of what happened and understand that there's a lot at stake here. And even though maybe it was a really bad decision to hire Adrian White and White Paper Solutions, that something very sinister happened here, something called electioneering, something called crafting an election for a result. And we as a country, we deserve better than that. But I agree with you.
But Dan, that's not just and I understand your sentiment. And Jill, I've met her, I had the opportunity to speak with her in person and as well on the show as well. I tell you, man, this didn't just happen to Jill Stein, allegedly or presumably. It happened to Bernie Sanders. I had Nico House on the show. He was sharing some stuff in North Carolina at his college, at the university, and he was a volunteer for the Bernie Sanders campaign. He talked about his first time on my show about what he thought were double agents, so to speak, who were actually working with Hillary, but then volunteered for Bernie, and then they did things that were underhanded, and it just didn't make sense. They weren't doing what they should have been doing to get out the vote in North Carolina. In his assumption, so I think this type of stuff goes on, and you can't control everything. It would be no shame at all, Jill, if that's the case. We would like to know it though, if you're aware.
And from what I understand, I believe Dr. Stein and the Green Party and everyone who's donated to the Green Party, I would be happy to help represent you in the state of Nevada to bring action against Ms. White for what I personally believe is fraud and collecting and attaining that $17,000. We may never see Adrian White again, unfortunately, because of the very clever laws of the state of Nevada. We don't even have Adrian White may not even be this person's name.
I was just thinking that, like deep throat.
Yeah, it may not even be this individual's name, and that's really unfortunate. I think, if enough people look at what's happened, not just in Nevada, but across the country, if we really started to understand that we may have to go through a few very difficult years, but that we can actually make change in this country. I think that's where we're at. I think we're there. And I think people who follow your show know that. I think, the people that tune into you every single night know that, hey, and the thing I really respect about you, Tim, is you don't say to the people who tune in, you don't say, this is what it is. You're not purporting to be CNN and say, here's a video of something that's cleverly framed. Here's the narrative. You say, hey, here's something I think you should know, and I think you should draw your own conclusions.
Exactly.
And I would challenge everyone out there, be prepared for a few years of serious discomfort. But for every millennial out there, I would tell you that it's not going to be any different than what you have had to endure for the last 15 years. You have had your prosperity taken from you. You have had the future, the idea of a job in our country being any certainty at all is a myth now. You are living in your parents' basements. You are struggling to find work that you love. And you spent the greater part of the last decade in perpetual war, fear of terrorism, and, really not getting to enjoy some of the finest years of your life because generations before you decided that, well, what the hell, we're not going to be around to see it anyway. So, be prepared to just sit and do your own research. And, we may have to go through some real electoral discomfort but that's okay. It's okay because, you know, I think one of the reasons that so much attention came about, you know, who Adrian White is people really felt for the first time since Senator Sanders, you know, turned in the nomination that they could be part of fixing the problem. And I know that, you know, the people that tune into your show, they feel that way as well. And I know from our dialogue today, the 2 minutes we spent on the phone, that you and I are going to talk again, and that, you know, we're going to continue to do the work that we're doing.
That's right.
And again, 30 minutes isn't enough time to talk about the whole narrative. What I would say to those of you who are watching is something that I'll be sharing with you soon. If you don't believe anything else that I said tonight, and you say to yourself, this isn't possible, it's not something that could happen in our country, you're right. But it happened before. It happened in a country called Iran. And it happened under the watch of one Secretary Hillary Clinton, who crafted a story and a narrative about what happened in Iran during her tenure and her time, with electioneering and election rigging, that when you read it in the context of Iran under the guise of Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State, all you have to do is take out the words Iran, radical Islam, and you could supplant the American election system in 2016, and it will scare the hell out of you. But, you know, let's not leave it on the scary note. Let's leave it on the high note.
Yeah.
There's a lot more information coming out. The WikiLeaks team has a lot of good information. The Guccifer team does have more information. You know, there's rumors that Snowden is going to drop some more information as well. So be part of that solution. Be part of this new media. What Senator Sanders did this election would never have happened if it wasn't for people like you who are watching Tim's show tonight.
Totally believe that, Dan. Without the new people that are coming out and us demanding more and us standing up, I mean, and that's one reason, Dan. Before you go, man, I just want to say one of the reasons why, regardless to what goes on with Bernie, don't get me wrong, I've been disappointed at different things. I always tell the truth, and this is how I really feel. But though I've been disappointed, I have to always remember that this, like, all of us have served a purpose, and Bernie's purpose has really brought a lot of great people together.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have met nearly as many people and been able to, you know, to have an impact, to go to Philly, to go DNC. I never would have been motivated to lead rallies in Philly without Bernie, you know. So I just, you know, we all do as much as we can, and as activists or as revolutionaries or just people who give a damn, you know, frankly, we all come together, you know. So take heart in that. I know it's scary, but you know what? We gotta face it. Like I opened up the show, we gotta face this stuff, Dan. If we don't face it, nothing will ever change. If we just duck our heads.
Yeah. I'll give one more shout out before I go. For those of you who follow me on Twitter or Periscope, please follow Tim. He's doing some great work. If you follow Tim, but you never heard of me, you know, check out my Twitter feed. It's at Dan Rolle. We're going to be posting some new information. This right here is a great team. And you're going to hear more from both of us. So again, thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Man, thank you for being here, Dan, man. I appreciate it, guys. Follow Dan Rolle. It's real easy. Just put an E at the end of Roll, and everything else, everything I've seen is just Dan Rolle. So on Twitter, is that the same way it is on Facebook, Dan?
You know, I'm working on the Facebook team. That's where you and I, we could share back and forth some details.
We can holler, man. Definitely. Give it up for my man, Dan Rolle, on Twitter, guys. Follow him. And
Thanks,
Periscope.
guys. Talk to you later.
You got it, Dan. Thanks for the time, brother. Wow, brother. Interesting, very interesting. You know what? I like that Dan tried to end on a positive note. He did end it on a positive note, because at the end of the day, this is rough information. You know, I mix it up. I bring comedy on. I brought an entertainer, great, majestic on the show with a D-I-Q, majestic on the show last night to mix it up. And tomorrow I have a comedian by the name of Spunky. And I tell you, but we cannot lose focus on really what's going on in the world. We mix it up. But Dan, what he said today is so relevant, okay? We have to take our electoral system back. We got to take control. We have to get involved. We have to be aware. We have to start fighting for what we want, okay? And the only thing I will say is I believe there's been corruption all this time, guys. It's just now through the internet, through social media, through people engaging and having this information, now we're able to share it. I think that anything that can be corrupted has been corrupted at some point by some entity, right? And just now the communication can't be controlled by mainstream media as closely as they were able to do it in the past. All right. So it really infuriates me when I see that mainstream crap sort of seeping into, independent media. This is my house. That's how I feel. We helped build this. I don't own it, but this is my community. So that's the way I started. That's the way I want to end. Someone tweeted to me something very negative about Dan. I will not give that bastard, whoever that person was, because somebody said, Tim, you must address this person who disparaged Dan. No, I don't. I'm not going to name their name. I'll just call them a loser. A blind loser who needs to wake up and open their eyes. If you're not a paid troll, I feel sorry for you. You need to become educated. People who put their reputations and their careers on the line to tell the truth deserve your respect. And you need to stop gobbling up MSNBC and CNN and other sellout media as your go-to for truth. Because there is nothing truthful in what they do. It's for ratings. And their masters. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you once again to Dan. Follow Dan Rolle on Twitter. And look, the bottom line is this, guys. Dan Rolle tried to run for Congress in Nevada. He saw that it was an opportunity for him to take a stand, to make a difference, to help affect the citizens in Nevada, to help their lives become better. He said, hey, I'm going to do this. And along the line, he learned that there was a system already in place that was corrupted. And those people in that system itself, looked him dead in the eye and it said, you going to eat your cornbread? And Dan said, yeah, I'm going to eat my cornbread. I'm trying to eat my cornbread if you let me eat my cornbread.
Nobody take no cornbread from me.
Well, after understanding the inner workings of how politics really runs, right? How it really runs, forget your AB school after school specials. In the real world, this is about money and this is about power. And those in power will not relinquish that power without a fight. So as Dan went on, he became or maintained engagement and wanted to understand, why did this go this way? That's when the system came back and said, maybe I ought to eat your cornbread. Now, what we try to do every day, every time out the gate, baby, every video, every tweet, well, almost every tweet, sometimes we have fun, but when we're serious, when we're on our JOBs, what we're trying to do is wake people up and make sure the establishment knows that some of us are not sheep. Some of us are warriors and some of us are fighters and survivors. You keep pushing us.
There's going to be consequences and repercussions.
That's right. It's going to be consequences and repercussions, y'all. Shout out to everybody out there who supports me. Shout out to Tim Black's Wolfpack, all my followers on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. You are the bomb. Periscope, thank you so much for watching. Shout out to all Dan Rolle's people as well. Great to have you. Pleasure to meet you. I see you tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And catch me earlier in the day for a Coffee with Tim Black show where I take 3 or 4 of the top stories that are jumping out there and do my best to give them to you as only I can. All right, guys. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. And if you're in Florida, please take care. Hurricanes are nothing to play with. I need you here because without you, how are we going to have a revolution? Shout out, and also, guys, be aware today was Cerebral Palsy Day. That means you need to go become aware and spread awareness. And if you can, spread some love. Go to cpworldday.org. That's it, guys. If you don't know me by now, you'll never know. No. Don't you let nobody take your cornbread. All right. Peace.